Today we're printing a 44 Magnum Revolver, and this is specifically the Vendetta. It's handled by Demus in Rainbow Six Siege, who is the main villain, and this is an extremely cool weapon. It's been recreated by Trox, and this is an absolutely lovely 3D model to work with, and it's been quite easy to print. So of course, stuff like the barrel, very easy to get out without any real issues. However, the body is a whole different thing because it needs a lot of support structure, which means I got to go in and of course rip that all out afterwards. And other than that, it has just been great to work with. Tolerances have been incredible. I've got no idea if he plans to put this out for free or to sell it, or if it's just going to be hit for himself. But he was very nice to let me be a beta tester and have a first go at it. Now, I'm still very much a novice when it comes to support structures, so having a look at this, I'd love to know what you guys think of what I'm using and what you think would be better. Because of course, once you remove it, you gotta clean it up big time, and I would love to know if there's a better way of doing these things, as I still am very much learning. But overall, everything came out, I think, pretty damn good. And I did do a lot of work afterward, did a little bit of sanding and stuff like that. But I never do filler or anything like that. I try to keep it quite simple. But the pieces all looked great. Now you can see the handguard there in two pieces. We'll get to that shortly because I did change that up quite considerably. But when it came to everything else, like the cylinder and all that, just came out perfect. Now there is a bunch of parts here with great instructions as well for putting the whole thing together. I'm also going to need a spring as well because the whole actual bit is going to work. And there'll even be a movable trigger, which would be pretty cool. But you can see there's a ton of little bits that are going to be getting introduced into this 3D build. And we're going to, of course, have to put all of this together. But it is going to look exceptional when it's done. And it will take a while to get it all finished. This is part one. There's going to definitely be a part two where we finish off the design. But we are going to get most of the way there with this video today. So you can see here the support structure I had in. It did its job really well. And all of it did end up coming out. Of course, had to get into some of the interior parts because, for instance, that bit does actually go into it, but it wasn't too bad. And the support structure here on the barrel worked incredibly well. All of this came out so good, and everything ended up being incredibly sharp in all the right places. And we'll just fast forward through all of this very boring stuff. And of course, not showing everything, we had quite a bit of support structure here that had to be removed. But the whole thing looked great. This was the mess afterwards, which of course I did hoover up and then continued building. But you can see exactly how much support structure we had to do. Now this was my big fail. So I printed the handguard initially in two halves, and obviously it didn't work. So there was thankfully a version that is a hole. So I decided to mess around with it and cut off the bottom so I get flat bit to then print upwards. And of course I could print that little bit off and then stick back on later. And because it already has a hole in that bit, I think it kind of looks like it's supposed to be. And I also did a cubic infill on that too because I wanted it to be much, when you actually hold it, I want it to be solid. But the big difference is that I did like printing it on its side because I like the layer lines because I was going to matte paint it black. And I thought the layer lines might look a little bit like wood. Whereas, of course, this one printed from the bottom up makes it much more, of course, like plastic. But at the end of the day, it does look pretty good. It probably would be on this weapon a composite material rather than wood. He's supposed to be a kind of a Western character in the game, but obviously modern day, and he definitely isn't. He uses modern day tech and all that, so it's probably fine to be composite. But I would have loved it if we could have got the side layers going. And then I was able to start doing some major assemblies. So of course, the barrel attached to the body. And I could start fitting the sights as well. With most of it being painted silver too, it was quite easy to just attach most of the bits and bobs. And then the rest, you can see, for instance, the 3 holes in the body. That's going to be black pins at the end of the day. So of course, don't want to put them in right now as we're getting it painted up. But we've now got to the point where we've kind of got most of what we need right now. The cylinder, we've got the part that attaches to the cylinder, we've got the hand grip, the barrel and the body. So most of the major parts are done. There's also a couple of magnets to be added into these parts so that when the cylinder comes up, it'll be held in place by the magnets. And then we've got a ton of little pieces that are going to be jammed together put together in order for the cylinder to be able to spin and all that. And at the end of the day, hopefully it should end up looking freaking cool. But anyway, let's start moving on to painting it. So we've got the major bits put together, and there's a few small parts we can add on, but the overall kind of move here is now to start to paint this thing up, and then eventually we'll be able to, of course, fit on the grip and all that, and fit the cylinder in. So yeah, right now, let's jump into the painted up version. So this is us ready to go. You can see me just having a quick test fit there, and then we are on to our painted version. So this is looking pretty simple right now. It doesn't look anything too spectacular or anything, but I think this is going to look sensational when it's put together. And of course, without the actual hand grip on the end, it does look a little bit weird. But here she is. Now the 3D model for its front little gaps, which are like the muzzle brakes, they don't actually go into the barrel. So that's one recommendation I've sent back to the original designer. Hopefully he will make it so they actually go into the barrel, so it makes more of a sense. It does match the in-game model, but of course with them not going anywhere, it doesn't really make any sense of why they are there. But yeah, I think the paint job is overall pretty good. I don't do filler or anything like that, but I try, of course, to make the layers as least visible as possible. And I think I've done an alright job. I don't think I'm going to give this a clear coat. I'm kind of tempted to, but I don't think I should. I think it'll make it a little bit too shiny, and I don't really want to go that far. However, the matte black paint job I did on the handguard here is exceptionally good. Although I would have preferred the layer lines to maybe look at kind of a wood-like look to it, I think this actually ended up being a better finish, and it looks so good as one piece. It really looks much more professional, and it's going to go in incredibly well. I did do a test fit where I actually pushed it in and it clicks into place, and it's very hard to get out. So this is me just doing a soft test fit here. But of course it clicks in and then there's a pin that goes through. I should be able to mount all that with no glue. Right, the test I did, I almost couldn't get it apart without the pin. So I think once we put the pin in there, it's going to be solid. And we need to next move on to the more complicated part with the cylinder and all the moving pieces and making sure I don't glue something I shouldn't. And we even need some springs. But overall, I think it's looking very good. And it'll be the final pieces that really bring it together. Because right now, it does, of course, look a little bit odd. But once we get that cylinder in there, once we get the grip on, once we get the pegs in, it is all going to just very much adhere together. And I think we're going to end up with a hell of a thing. But I'm editing this before I do any of that. So fingers crossed that I'm right, that it ends up actually coming out excellent. But yeah, right now it's looking like it's going to work. I think it's going to look really good. So you'll find part 2 on this channel. Of course, subscribe, like, and I hope you guys stick around for more projects in the future.